We are in a climate crisis and on our way to climate emergency and untold suffering. To secure a sustainable future, it is time each one of us comes up with new ideas and action too. Who would have thought orchids, a beautiful group of plants, could be used as a tool to mitigate climate change? Well, I'm going to share with you a story behind my idea to use orchids as a tool to fight climate change. Orchids are considered as a symbol of beauty, love, strength, and wealth. The ancient Greeks considered orchids as a symbol of virility. I study orchids not because I am curious to know if orchid tubers can actually help a man with the gender of an unborn child, but I study orchids because they are the most successful flowering plants in the world. Orchids are considered as economically very important because they are widely used in horticulture, floristry, and increasingly in fragrance and pharmaceutical industries. They are a very charismatic group of plants and have been called the pandas of the plant world. Orchids are a source of income in some countries. They establish themselves on trees, soil, rocks, and sometimes graciously grow as climbing herb, just like the popular vanilla. During my doctoral research, I observed orchids that thrived in the forest canopy. The magnificent architecture of the trees opens up a different world up there in the canopy, an interface between atmosphere and the forest floor. I explored the environmental factors that could possibly help orchids grow in the forest, on the tree, or on the branch where they are growing. It was after 4 long years of hard work, hiking arduous trails, spending chilly nights in tents and shelters and sometimes in open, donating lots of blood to tens of thousands of leeches, accomplishing a couple of summits in the holy hills of the Western Ghats, I finally learned about orchids. My research findings suggested the natural habitat of orchids are influenced by the structural diversity of trees. The forests that are less disturbed offers huge mature trees that are structurally diverse and therefore offer pockets of habitats or microhabitats for orchids. Plants like orchids in the canopy can regulate the climate within the canopy and at the same time are being influenced by the weather events in the atmosphere. So the most important takeaway from my research is that orchids can be an indicator group to the structural complexity of the tropical forest ecosystem because they would react to any unfavorable change in the forest structure and climate. During this pure plant science research, it was both a blessing and a good distraction that I could be a part of an orchid conservation project along with my research guide. The amazing agricultural landscapes of coffee and cardamom plantations in the hilly forest tracts of Wayanad was a pure delight to work in. These plantations maintains native trees as shade because crops such as coffee, cardamom and cacao prefers sun filtering canopy. Sharing orchid knowledge with the local community was very filling for me, because they learned orchids are harmless and do not destroy their trees, and how to restore orchids if they are found fallen from the canopy. But beyond that, I was stunned by what I learned from them. I came to know a fact that these agricultural landscapes act as a stronghold for unique and endemic orchids of the Western Ghats in a far better way compared to the degraded forests that are contiguous. This was a new information for me. I found a lot of different researchers that agreed with this sort of observation. Interestingly, these spectacular trees not only supported orchids, but they became a habitat for thousands of microorganisms and created a refuge for different kinds of fauna, sequester tons of carbon, regulate the local climate, and nourish the agroecosystem on a daily basis. With this finding, this spark in mind, I came back to my ancestral land where we cultivate rubber as a monocrop. I put in extra effort to understand the diversity that might be found in the rubber plantations. I was surprised and amazed to see the huge amount of biodiversity there that I have never had noticed before. This opened my eyes. Ever since then, I cannot stop thinking about the importance of agricultural landscapes in biodiversity conservation, as it is my newfound love. We are in a climate crisis, whether we like it or not. The biggest threat we already face is changing climate. The existing intensive agricultural practices would not withstand the irregular patterns in the climate, and therefore going to create a second challenge, food insecurity, and along with it, poverty and loss of livelihood. This would gradually increase the pressure on protected areas and forests, thereby creating a third challenge, loss of biodiversity. As Jeff Mayer said, I believe this is time to farm and eat like the world depends on it. Yes, the answer lies in agroecosystems. Being a sustainable ecological approach, agroecology could meet the needs of the society without compromising the future demands of the coming generations. It takes into account environmental, social, and economical sustainability, which are the three pillars for a sustainable development. Agroecosystem is based on the principles of ecosystem and long-term survival of the land, and it allows the survival of native biodiversity. IUCN, International Union of Conservation for Nature and Natural Resources, identified 14 different agroecological approaches from around the world that serves the best results for the farmer and the earth. And there are also a lot of research that suggests that a farmer who cultivates diverse crops in an integrated way survive extreme weather events, produce greater yields, and increase their income. Therefore, we understand that these agroecological approaches has the potential to restore agricultural landscapes, ensure ecosystem services, increase climate resilience, food security, multiple livelihood options, and conservation of local biodiversity. In order to enhance the potential of agroecosystems to fight climate change, we should promote and encourage smallholder farmers to create diverse agroecosystems. The more diverse the agroecosystem is, the more efficient it becomes. And this process requires deliberate attempts in policy making, climate finance, scientific interventions, public-private partnerships, supply chain management, and above all, youth leadership. I am confident if the youth start the work, the rest will follow. Being one among them, I look forward to persuade smallholder farmers to maintain the structural complexity of their agroecosystems using orchids as a tool. Orchids in agroecosystems indicate we have a strong, structurally complex ecosystem working in our agricultural landscape that can mitigate all the challenges posed by climate change. Therefore, this is my call to action for you. Let us localize. Let us create small but innovative agroecosystems in our own yard. Take the pain to help your family, village, town, or city to create agroecosystems to support ourselves. Let us own our future. Thank you.